Welcome to the 3 Knockdown Rule.
And welcome to the latest edition of Quick Jabs on 3 Knockdown Rule. Again, I'll be doing these once a week because a lot happens between the 2 Mondays that Mario Lopez and I tape a full edition of the program, which is out now. Make sure you like and subscribe. And generally, I'm going to do these on Thursday, but because of what was filed yesterday by Lamont Roach, I felt it was important to do this particular one on a Wednesday. And I'm sure you've heard, and I don't want to rehash the whole fight between Lamont Roach and Tank Davis that ended in a draw this past Saturday at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. But because of round 9 and what took place, Lamont Roach and his representatives, headed by attorney Greg Smith, have sent a letter to the NSAC basically saying, we'd like a full review of that particular round, what took place. And basically, they want to make sure that they get justice in the form of either calling that fight a TKO in their favor or making sure that Lamont Roach is ruled the winner. Now, personally, do I think that they have a case? Yes. But here's what they don't have going for them. And I spoke to Greg Smith for a little bit on Tuesday. There's no precedent. There really is no precedent for this type of action ever resulting in a revocation or a reversal of a decision. Okay, keep that in mind. And the thing that I keep thinking of is this going to lead to a slippery slope where a lot of close decisions now are going to be protested and people are going to pick out 1 or 2 situations that happened in the fight and say, well, wait a minute, this thing here was not correct. This needs to be reviewed. Sometimes it's be careful what you wish for. But yes, if there's ever a case for a scorecard of a particular round or a result or a ruling to be reversed, it would be this one. In my particular opinion, I think at the very least what should be done is not that Steve Willis, the referee in question, should be fired or banned for life, but there has to be some sort of discipline here. I would say for a period of 6 to 12 months that he is not allowed to referee the main events in his area. I think that's fair, and I don't think that's overly punitive. There has to be some sort of accountability. Here's the interesting thing. Number one, this may be the best way to promote the rematch should one occur between Lamont Roach and Tank Davis. And also, from a bargaining standpoint, if Lamont Roach would have won the decision, he would have been locked into set financial terms. That's the way a lot of these rematch clauses are drawn up. Now that it's a draw, there really is no rematch clause because that only goes one way for one fighter with one result. You can now argue based on the public pressure and the attention that this fight has gotten, you know what? Maybe Lamont Roach bargains now or negotiates from a stronger position. Just a thought that I had. According to some people, by the end of the week, some sort of ruling will be made by the NSAC, who now understands that they are under the gun. They are now under the spotlight. Recommended viewing. Joe Habib of Ringside Reporter did about an hour-long interview with a former commissioner of New York who does his own show, Randy Gordon, good friend of mine. And Randy Gordon was very, very honest and blunt. He said there's flat out he would reverse the call, and he admits there were mistakes made from an administrative standpoint, so recommended viewing there. Also, speaking of New York, Fatal Fury, the press conference hosted by my buddy Doug Fisher, took place on Tuesday, was pretty lively as expected. Fights involving Teofimo, Lopez, Ryan Garcia, and Devin Haney. I think the chalk will prevail here. I expect all 3 favorites to win, although the best fight by far is Arnold Barboza, who's the WBO mandatory for Teofimo. They will finally fight, so good luck to all of the participants. That kicks off, guys, a very busy weekend in boxing. Cinco de Mayo weekend. That Friday, you'll have Fatal Fury, that card presented by Ring Magazine. Then Saturday from Saudi Arabia, it will be Saul Canelo Alvarez taking on his missed mandatory and Vincent Skull. And then reports are from Chava Rodriguez of ESPN that the monster, Inoue, is going to fight on a Sunday. He's not going to be fighting King Kong or Godzilla. I guess they're going to find some sort of Mexican to prop up on that weekend. So expect back-to-back-to-back days of boxing in early May. Just announced by Golden Boy, Oscar Collazo, one of the best fighters in the world, and the WBA and WBO and Ring Magazine champion at 105. He will be the co-feature for the Jose Zepeda and Tevin Farmer rematch in Cancun. I expect Nick Van Exel to be out there. That's his favorite vacation spot. And Oscar Collazo, I believe he's one of the best fighters in the world. He's now showing up on these pound-for-pound lists, and he's active. I remember last year he said, I'm going to fight 5 times after Oscar De La Hoya said, I challenge anyone to do what I did in 1997, and I'll write them a check for several $1 million or something. And Collazo said, you know what, I'll do it. I want to do it. And suddenly at that point, Golden Boy said, well, let's halt his activity. But anyway, here's what I want for Oscar Collazo moving forward, who's a very exciting fighter. I looked. Out of his last 8 or 9 fights, only one of them, get this, have been in Puerto Rico. I think it's time now, based on his stature and what he's accomplished, that you get him out back onto the island. And look, he's a more exciting version of Ivan Calderon with a hard-hitting style. He finishes fights. I think he deserves it. And finally, this was announced on Wednesday morning. TKO and Turkey and Dana White, they're going into a partnership. They did a video. They shook hands. I'm sure you've seen it on social media. They are now starting a boxing league. I don't know all the parameters or what the format's going to be. I would assume it's more fights, contenders fighting against each other, champions who are now going to be able or are going to be forced to fight tougher fights on a more consistent basis. I like the overall vision, but I do have a question based on the reality of today's game. Are today's fighters going to be willing to fight more often, which means more than once or twice a year, against tougher opposition, and get this may be the tough part, for less money? Because that's kind of the way the UFC does, and it's good for the brand, it's great for the fans, it may not be great for the fighters. So the question becomes, does this vision match the current culture of professional boxing? That remains to be seen. All right, that's it for this week's edition of Quick Jazz. Make sure you go to 3 Knockdown Rule, like and subscribe. We'll be back next Monday.
Hey, it's Steve Kim. Watch the full episode for free on YouTube or stream the podcast live on all major platforms. The 3 Knockdown Rule with Steve Kim and Mario Lopez.